West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Right on time in breaking news, Jack Smith, special counsel. Yes, he's the special counsel, properly appointed by the Department of Justice and by Merrick Garland, is appealing this breathtaking decision by Judge Aileen Cannon to once and for all rid herself of the Mar-a-Lago case that she hasn't liked from the moment it was assigned to her by finding that the special counsel was illegitimate, invalid, improperly appointed, and improperly funded, taking the cue from a bunch of MAGA right-wing think tanks who wrote briefs that she accepted and made arguments in her courtroom that she accepted, even though they're not parties to the case. And then the final nail in the coffin for Judge Cannon is the love letter from Judge Clarence Thomas in the July 1st immunity decision that looked like it was directed directly to her. It might as well have said, "Dear Judge Cannon," or "Dear Aileen, you should challenge the special prosecutor's special counsel position and dismiss the entire indictment based on its illegitimacy." Well, Jack Smith is not taking it any longer. They've been waiting. They've been chomping at the bit at the special counsel's office to get a substantive ruling out of Judge Cannon, not one of these little quarter-page paperless orders that we've reported about ad nauseum here on the Midas Touch Network, but an actual living, breathing, good old-fashioned 93-page decision that is replete with improper analysis. It's both prolix, her decision, 93 pages, and short on analysis and proper legislative research and citations. I don't know how you can be both 93, both heavy and light at the same time. It's just chock full of make-weight without real substantive proper analysis. And she, with the back of her hand, she dispatches and makes short work of the analysis based on the statutes that actually authorize, pardon me, the special counsel. So Jack Smith, as expected, waiting for this day for 2 years to find the third major reversible error mistake by Judge Cannon and argue for her reassignment off the case to the 11th Circuit, has finally spoken. Spokesperson for the special counsel's office, I'll read it to you. Peter Carr, special counsel, Jack Smith's office, quote, "The dismissal of the case deviates from the uniform conclusion of all previous courts to have considered the issue that the Attorney General is statutorily authorized to appoint a special counsel. The Justice Department has authorized the special counsel to appeal the court's order." Think of those words alone. Just that last sentence is a thumb in the eye back at Judge Cannon. Judge Cannon spent 3 whole pages in her decision, starting on page 24, telling the special counsel that he is invalid, saying that he's not an employee of the Department of Justice, that he doesn't have any authority with the Department of Justice, he's not a special attorney under the Department of Justice, he's just a stranger to the case. And in a very succinct way, almost like a haiku from Jack Smith to Aileen Cannon, he said the following: the Justice Department has authorized a special counsel to appeal the court's orders because I take my orders, because I'm an employee. I am funded by the special counsel. That is already an exact response to her analysis. This is what the briefing said on page 24. Aileen Cannon said in her order that neither of the statutes relied upon by the Department of Justice and the special counsel to justify his existence work. Those two statutes approved by Congress are 28 U.S.C. section 510 and 515. On 510, let me read you the language of 510. 510 says the Attorney General may from time to time make such provisions as he considers appropriate, authorizing the performance by any officer, employee, or agency of the Department of Justice of any function of the Attorney General. What is the special counsel other than an employee or agency of the DOJ being given a function of the Attorney General? There's no doubt that Main Justice, the Department of Justice, could have prosecuted Donald Trump, but they did a good thing, not a bad thing, under Section 28 U.S.C. 510. But this is how dismissive she is. She analyzes that in one paragraph out of 93 pages on page 24. And she says that after she says special counsel Smith, all agree and as required by the special counsel regulations, was selected from outside the United States government. What does that have to do with anything? He was selected from outside the United States government. But once selected, Judge Cannon, he became an officer, employee, or agent of the DOJ to fulfill a function of the Attorney General. And then she's so self-satisfied with her analysis that she ends it after one paragraph in 93 pages, the most fundamental issue in the case, with saying no more discussion about 510 is necessary. Because she declares it so in an imperious way, showing false bravado and misplaced bravado. Does the same thing about the other statute authorized by Congress that allows for the appointment of a special counsel, Section 515. Here she says, and I'm going to read you to 515, little b, as we say. Each attorney specially retained under authority of the Department of Justice shall be commissioned as special assistant to the Attorney General or special attorney and shall take the oath required by law. That all happened here. I know she doesn't like to acknowledge it, but the special counsel was commissioned as a special assistant to the Attorney General or as a special attorney. She says, well, that only refers to the U.S. attorneys in each district. No, that's not what it says. It rises and falls based on the express language, the literal language of the statute. And she then says under 515B, as she goes through the analysis on page 26 and 27, she concludes that he's not a special attorney because he's outside of the normal ranking hierarchy of the Department of Justice. I mean, this is utter and complete nonsense. And to remind her of who his boss is, even though he is quote unquote special, he is not independent. Let me repeat that. Jack Smith is special counsel, not independent counsel. Yes, there is supervision under the Department of Justice guidelines, there is supervision by the Attorney General of the actions of the special counsel. And he acts to run the case to give a bit of distance or a wall between Main Justice. It doesn't mean he's not employed. It doesn't mean when he gets his direct deposit every month from somewhere, it's not coming from Merrick Garland's personal bank account. The payment to Jack Smith to pay him his salary and those of everyone around him. I mean, Aileen Cannon was all upset. Oh, he spent $14 million. I mean, a third of that is for security details to protect the special counsel from death threats created by Donald Trump's rhetoric. The rest is the sprawling investigation in two places, Mar-a-Lago and the Department of Justice case against him and DC election interference. It's just, he spent a lot of money. Right. And every time the Jay Bratt or Jeff or Pierce or any of the special counsels working under Jack Smith get paid, if they were to look at their paycheck, it would say it's coming from the Department of Justice, the U.S. Treasury. Where does he think the money's coming from? I mean, that's why he said, and the Department of Justice and the Attorney General has authorized me to appeal your butt. That's my own personal observation on that. Here's what's going to happen now. Because Aileen Cannon's decision is such an outlier, such a rogue, such a so outside the mainstream, such fringe adoption of theories, zombie theories that have been floating around the right-wing MAGA conservative world forever. Anything they could throw up against the wall, if they could just find a judge to accept it, they found a judge in Aileen Cannon. But fortunately, she's got bosses at the 11th Circuit. We know she's ignored, thank God for that. We know she's ignored her fellow senior judges in the Southern District of Florida. There's already been reporting that Judge Cecilia Altanaga, who I know well from when I practice in Miami, who's now the chief judge in the Southern District, tried to counsel Aileen Cannon to step off the case. And I think Judge Middlebrooks did the exact same thing. She refused. Now we know why. Because who else was going to make this decision that she just made to dismiss an indictment, finding that the special counsel's office is improper after 20 or 30 years of its operation under more than one president, including Donald Trump's own Attorney General, Bill Barr? So thankfully, it's going to the 11th Circuit. Now, the 11th Circuit is filled of former trial judges in Miami, and I know some of them well, in Alabama and in Georgia. William Pryor, a Georgia former judge, is the chief judge. But there's other judges, keep saying lawyers, there's other judges on the 11th Circuit that sits in Atlanta, sometimes hears oral argument in different places in Alabama or in Florida. These judges are waiting, I believe, for her to have made this major step. And this isn't her stepping in a bucket. This is her stepping into a crevice and disappearing into oblivion, because they're going to reverse her at the 11th Circuit. The question is how quickly. How quickly is that briefing schedule going to be arranged? Now, I'm a member of the 11th Circuit, and I'm a member of the Southern District of Florida, and I've appeared in front of many of the judges in the Southern District of Florida, just not Aileen Cannon, although I have been in her courthouse up in Fort Pierce. And so I think what's going to happen is they're going to set a relatively quick briefing schedule throughout the month of July into August, and they're going to make it, after oral argument, they're going to make a ruling in August. And I think it's going to be against Aileen Cannon. They're going to order her to reopen the case, and they may even reassign it, because the 11th Circuit has a lemon law. 3 strikes and you're out, and she's made 3. This will be her 3rd major reversible error decision as a young, immature, inexperienced judge. 2 to start the case about the documents and the search warrant, and 1 now. And if they reassign her, which they're allowed to do under another statute that she won't be able to challenge or misinterpret, they'll sign it to another senior judge in the Southern District of Florida. It could be Judge Middlebrooks, who already had the Clinton-Trump case. Could be Judge Altanaga. Anyone will do a better job than Judge Aileen Cannon. And that's the issue that the special counsel is now going to prosecute. And of course, as I've done another hot take, this opens the floodgates of attacks against the special counsel. Not just this special counsel, prior special counsels. Come one, come all. If you were prosecuted and convicted by a special counsel, you've got a new case that you can wave around on your appeal and move to vacate your judgment or your verdict against you. Hunter Biden, doesn't matter that your father and his lawyers run the Department of Justice. You can try to get your recent gun conviction overturned. Maybe. And, of course, Donald Trump's going to file the same motion, citing back to Aileen Cannon in front of Judge Chutkan. I can't wait for that collision of intellects to happen. Aileen Cannon's decision, half-baked as it is, too smart by half as it is, going before Judge Chutkan in the D.C. election interference case. I think she makes short work of that motion to dismiss, and then you've got the D.C. Court of Appeals probably affirming the same thing. Will it eventually end up with the United States Supreme Court? Yes. When will that be? Not this term. Term is over. Sometime in the next term, which means sometime between Election Day and the inauguration or after.
It is Tuesday, the 16th of July of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little Yorkie, is convalescing still, and that's a good thing. And that means that we will be seating you directly for our especially special, daily special, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash. A mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. Okay. Well, trying to conjure up some enthusiasm, as some of you, or most of you, know already, since we did not have a show yesterday. You may have found out on the social medias that my elderly dad passed into another plane of existence, we hope. Is that how it works? I don't know. Regardless, he left us yesterday around 7-ish West Coast time. And I was up all night worrying because the day before we had Zoomed together, and while he was saying I love ya, and I had responded back to him about something else, he'd gotten a little bit of, I think my sisters had some Ativan and maybe a morphine, I'm not sure. But regardless, you could tell that he was getting a little bit uncomfortable, and I could tell that maybe that was the last lucid exchange that we would have, and it was. So very saddening, of course, and that's to be expected, but it still is. Once again, everybody's dad and everybody's mom is special. But my dad's kind of special. He was a good guy. And I sort of count or point at him as an example of a good dad. Let your kids be inquisitive. You got a bunch of books, let them read them. I read every book in my dad's collection, and I got to tell you, it was lots. That was just in the home library. In the home library, I was able to finish all of his books by the time I was 15. And so, mostly because they were beyond me, and it took a while to be able to get up enough speed to be able to partially understand what the hell was going on in these books. Get a little bit of backstory, and then you finally figure it out. So by the time I was 15, I read every book at least once, and there were many books I read many times. I was one of those kids that read the dictionary cover to cover. Start in the beginning, look for a narrative arc, and I got to tell you, there's not really one. I've looked, I got to tell you, not just once, but a few times, cover to cover of the dictionary. So I always thought, it might be kind of fun to make a dictionary with a narrative arc. Then I decided, no, that would not be fun. I've got more and other things to do that might conjure a little bit more fun. Regardless, Dad let me read every single book in his library. And then I got to say, it wasn't just him who held his collection or his library at Cal State Fullerton close. It was also Cal State Fullerton. Let's be clear about that. So my dad was a professional historian, and they just didn't give that stuff out willy-nilly to anybody who came up there, even if they were his kids. You had to go through protocol. I always thought that was fun. Back in the day, for those of you who know, who could just go to the Huntington Library anytime they want by hitting a key somewhere on your laptop, device, etc., is that you had to be accompanied if you weren't already really a member of the Huntington Library, which meant that you had to have been, a doctorate. Maybe they let masters in. You know what? I think they did, because it was a research library. Essentially, you had to be a professional historian to go peruse the stacks. And I got to do that with my dad. That was fun. One sad thing that I did with my dad is that as a reward, he's the one that got me to walk precincts. Started pretty darn early, too. Handing out campaign literature, walking precincts, question book in hand, checking off the check boxes, handing out literature, reading the electorate, yada, yada, yada. Started damn early in grade school. So, in junior high, on the night of June 5th, 1968, I got to accompany my dad to the Ambassador Hotel because my dad was on the California State Steering Committee. And he was there to, it was the primary. And though we were not in the Ambassador when RFK Jr. was assassinated, boy, we have a lot of that going around, don't we? We were on our way out, but we heard it on the radio. Might have even been KFWB. That was the radio station of choice when we were in the car traveling on the freeways. But, I got to go to the Ambassador Hotel while Dad essentially dropped off stuff from the steering committee to the platform committee. Let's go to Chicago and win there. So lots of experiences of our history. I got to bump up against, brush shoulders, maybe pointed elbows. Got to meet famous and infamous people because my dad was, fairly well-respected academic in his field, and a nice guy, too. Boy, could he tell stories, and he had a really nice Irish brogue when he would sing cowboy songs. He had a portfolio of cowboy songs. Not just ones he made up. He never made up a cowboy song. But he had, like I said, a portfolio of cowboy songs, and he'd break them out, just start singing them. Yep, he was a fun guy. Miss my dad. Okay, so also, my God, all the things that have happened in the world, too, that are just making me mad. Bad enough about what the Supreme Court said about immunity, I guess. And then the assassination attempt. Was that an assassination attempt? I'm not sure yet. I still want to know about the medical report. Because we're not supposed to get into conspiracies here, but until they ask some questions, I'd like to know, which way was the bullet traveling? A bullet traveling to kill the sniper, or a sniper bullet coming in to try to take a pot shot at Donnie? Just curious about that. Okay. Three snipers inside the building. Let's not secure the roof. Give me a break. Especially one with a pitched roof where you can just set up a line of sight and like, there you are. But then you expose your head and that's how you get killed, and that's how he got killed. Just curious. Ooh, I don't know. Too much weird stuff going on there. I've already, and if you saw my social media feeds, you'll know that from the very beginning, I could not understand I did understand the complete degradation of all protocol to appease a narcissist. at the point that the narcissist would just get killed. Now, I heard, maybe I shouldn't even be saying this. I need to actually look this up. And I started to on July 20th, 1942, I believe it was. Somebody tried to assassinate Hitler. Now, people go, well, Hitler, they tried to assassinate Hitler once. No, they tried to assassinate him 32 times, and they uncovered 70 plots to kill him. And 32 attempts. Come on, man. Yeah, he was well loved by the German public. Anyway, on July 20th, I believe it was 1942, somebody apparently tried to shoot Adolf Hitler, injured his ear, and then he went around saying that he was saved by the grace of God. God's hand directed that bullet so that it was only his ear that he got injured. Did he wear a Kotex on that ear? Can you imagine Adolf Hitler bouncing around the German countryside, flying into, I don't know, wherever, Dusseldorf? I know that's not the German countryside, but I always like saying Dusseldorf. Flying in, getting out of his plane, waving, doing the stiff arm salute. Wearing a Kotex on his ear? I don't think so. I don't really even consider Hitler to be that manly to begin with, let alone this airbrushed, blow-dried, bouffant-looking guy. Give me a break. Oh, God. All right. Yeah, it just seemed too professional wrestling, Is Trump the heel? Well, of course we think he is, but I'm still trying to figure out what this guy's persona in the wrestling world is. So, too much going on here. I'd like to understand what the hell went on. Why is there no medical report? I don't get that. I mean, that's just standard procedure. Jesus, when Wallace got shot, the doctors in the ICU met the scrum of reporters while they were wheeling George Wallace. I'm sorry, the ER doctors got interviewed by the scrum right outside the ER doors while Wallace was being wheeled to ICU. So, it's a little bit of a precedent there, one would think. I mean, even with Reagan. God. There was a whole conspiracy. He wasn't really shot. It was like camera angles and trajectories. It says, see, he's not really expressing pain while he's being pierced by a bullet in his side right here. Well, sometimes there's a delay. Body kicks in, you got some endorphins there, and, there are sometimes it can be quite immediate. A lot of times people go, I didn't even know I was shot. Yeah, you're in shock. So I wanted to hold off on this whole conspiracy thing. But, putting a Kotex on your ear for the RNC, how many people are going to now dress like that? What kind of message does that send to the kids? Now, this is a guy that we all know. I mean, he's already written about it in his books. Well, he didn't write it. He thinks wearing a wedding ring makes a guy look weak. Pussy whipped. Makes him look like a pussy. This is a guy who says wearing a wedding ring makes you look like a pussy, but wearing a Kotex on your ear doesn't. When people say, prove that Russian brainwashing works, and I'm saying right there, buddy. Right there. Kotex on the ear, but it's the wedding ring that makes you look like a pussy. All right. I don't think Petticoat Junction does that to people. I don't think it was Petticoat Junction. Could have been. I don't think it was Harry Nielsen and John Lennon on a alcohol binge at the Whiskey A Go-Go, by the way. It was John Lennon who wore a Kotex on his head. That was more like one of those flapper hats. This Kotex on the ear like Van Gogh. Van Gogh. I know. Van Gogh. Okay, so why don't we give you a rundown of what we have in store for you? I'm just meandering, of course. I really considered not doing a show today, but I thought maybe it would be therapeutic. Yeah, right. Another way of being morose and using avoidance. Well, whatever. At the top, that was Jack Smith as the Midas Touch guys there. He quickly delivered a reality check to Eileen Cannon, and she takes her orders from powers greater than her. Trust me. On the rest of the menu, the feds charged 3 former Chicago hospital executives in a $15 million embezzlement scheme. Nice. The president of Dickinson State University in North Dakota resigned after all of the nursing faculty quit. Why do they do that? We'll find out. And a Georgia county says slave descendants cannot use the referendum process to challenge the rezoning of their island community. Yeah, rezoning's for little people. Or not. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Italy's tax police freed 33 Indian farm workers from slave-like working conditions in the northern province of Verona. Think of that. The fascists in Italy are more liberal than the guys in Georgia County. What's up with that? And Estonia's first woman prime minister is stepping down to become the European Union's top diplomat. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. That our homepage is still under construction, Tom has provided us with not only a player button that is utilizable but not quite the Creek FM player button that we want, but you can still go to our homepage and play our live feed by the button provided, and of course the calendar is there so you can see our lineup. But if you go to the bottom of our page, Tom has provided a way for you to get to our Patreon page. So if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, it really does help us defray the costs of running this powerhouse of resistance. And we thank those of you who have been so generous. And sorry for the hiccups. Sometimes there are acts of God which are merely just when the ISP decides what they're going to do, which I got to tell you, the ISP's been pretty good lately. And then there are actual acts of God where the power goes out through no fault of human intervention that we can surmise. We had thunderstorms rolling through yesterday, and our power went out here at the mothership just before 5 p.m. West Coast time, where the heat was still registering right outside the door at the mothership at 111. But that's okay. It was, they said that we would have our power back on initially by 8. And at 8, it was down to 100, so that was good. But just before 8, we got to notice that our power would not be turned back on until around 11. So fortunately, we have a way of having the air move. And when you have the air move, even when you don't have the use of fans, it's always a good thing. But we had thunderstorms coming through too, which actually brought the temperature down a bit and swirled the wind. Yeah, like tornadoes. We had some neighbors who are actually looking at what they said are the beginning of funnel clouds. I go, yeah, that happens. But they don't often touch ground. So things were swirled around. Fortunately, everything in my gardens and stuff stayed in place. So it wasn't that violent of a swirling wind, but kind of a dust devil of sorts came through. And just telling you that our power went out, and we apologize for that. Sometimes there are acts of God that are true acts of God, as we understand them. And in spite of that, we thank you for your generosity in spite of those acts of God in which we're bumped off the air. It was totally beyond our control. And when the power came back on, so did we. So thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is by hardworking staff at the Associated Press. Federal authorities have charged a former Loretto hospital executive in a scheme to embezzle $15 million from the healthcare facility. In an indictment filed late last week, Anush Ahmed was charged with 8 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of embezzlement, 11 counts of aiding and abetting embezzlement, and 3 counts of money laundering. He could just claim it was official business now, couldn't he? Well, let's find out. Now, Ahmed was chief financial officer and CEO of the Safety Net Hospital when he resigned in 2021 for his involvement in questionable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, a controversy that is not part of this particular federal indictment. Criminal charges have also been filed against Samir Suhail of Chicago, who owns a medical supply company and allegedly participated in the fraud, and Heather Bergdahl, the hospital's former chief transformation officer. What the hell is that? She and Ahmed are from Houston. Transformation officer? Is this a hostile takeover? I don't know. The indictments allege that Ahmed Bergdahl and Suhail engaged in a scheme from 2018 to 2022 to siphon money from the hospital. They made requests for hospital payments to vendors for goods and services never provided. Did they really think they were going to get away with that? That's like the simplest thing to expose. God. They directed the money through a computerized system to accounts they controlled. Everybody thinks they're smarter than the cops. And I got to tell you, the cops aren't, excuse me, let's just be real here. The cops aren't very smart. They're usually behind the 8 ball on a lot of some kinds of technology. But even with that handicap, you're not smarter than the cop. Well, Suhail was charged with 6 counts of wire fraud, 6 counts of aiding and abetting embezzlement, and 2 counts of money laundering. Bergdahl was charged with embezzlement in May and also has been charged with 14 counts of wire fraud, 21 counts of embezzlement, and 1 count of money laundering. Associated Press staff bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And I should remind folks that if you follow my social media feeds at Justice Putnam in most cases, you'll be able to have quick access to these full articles that we are drawing such great inspiration from. The president of Dickinson State University in North Dakota announced his resignation yesterday, Monday, days after the school's nursing faculty quit. In a video, Steve Easton announced his departure and acknowledged turmoil between some of the faculty and the administration, apparently. Faculty members resigned on Wednesday, KFYR-TV reported. Former assistant professor of nursing Trista Keith told the station that the nursing faculty were notified their accreditation has been in jeopardy in recent years. She also cited insufficient time and resources for faculty to meet the accreditation requirements, among other reasons that the faculty resigned. Now, I should mention that it's a small university, 7 faculty members resigned, but that's all of the nursing faculty. Easton said the North Dakota Board of Nursing prohibited him and other administrators from looking for a new nursing facility. Sure. In a statement, the board said it did not force Easton's resignation or disallow hiring, but on Friday had issued a standard notice to the university of multiple nursing program shortcomings for review at a coming board meeting due to the faculty departures. Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Zoning changes by a Georgia county that some residents say threaten one of the South's last Gullah Geechee communities of black slave descendants cannot be challenged with a referendum, an attorney said yesterday, Monday, in a letter to the judge, considering a petition by local voters. Though Georgia's state constitution allows citizens to force special elections on some decisions by county governments, it doesn't give them the power to overturn county zoning decisions, wrote Ken Jared, an attorney representing McIntosh County Commissioners. Did his appointment meet all legal standards? We'll find out. Or does anybody question those things? Only when it comes to Trump. Now, Jared's letter to McIntosh County Probate Court Judge Harold Webster comes a week after black residents of Hog Hummock filed a petition seeking a referendum on the commissioner's decision last fall to weaken zoning restrictions that for decades helped protect the tiny Hog Hummock community, located on largely unspoiled Sapelo Island. Unspoiled? You mean a real estate developer's dream? Could be. Well, that's about 60 miles south of Savannah. Hog Hummock was founded by formerly enslaved people who had worked on the plantation of Thomas Spalding, and he's never forgiven them, apparently. About 30 to 50 black residents still live in modest homes along dirt roads in the community, also known as hog hummock. Descendants of enslaved island populations in the South became known as Gula or Geechee in Georgia. Their long separation from the mainland meant they retained much of their African heritage, and apparently that's been deemed illegal by certain boards of education with a certain hue. Yeah, we know who that is. All right, enough of that. And enough of, when I say enough of that, I mean enough of me. Let us now go to our break, though it will be quite short, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In a win for Wisconsin voters, a more moderate Wisconsin Supreme Court reinstated the use of ballot drop boxes, and a state appellate court upheld a lower court's decision on common sense rules governing absentee ballot witness information. July 5th, Wisconsin's High Court reversed a 2022 decision by a then more conservative court, which said drop boxes were not allowed by the state constitution. The arguments hinged on whether delivering an absentee ballot to a municipal clerk meant handing the ballot to a clerk or using an official drop box. The current court decided that the previous court's opinion was unsound in principle and found that delivering a ballot to a drop box was in fact delivering it to a clerk. A state appeals court affirmed a lower court's ruling July 11th that absentee ballots, which require a witness signature and address in Wisconsin, could be counted if there was missing information, provided the witness and address could still be confirmed. Republican legislators had challenged absentee ballots for which voter information was correct, but witness information lacked a complete address, such as a spouse writing "same" in the address line. The order will allow more absentee ballots to be counted. As state primaries approach, it's a good time to check your voter registration status with your local election officials. We have the rulings, local reporting, and groups taking action linked at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day fatalities on Bloody Thursday touched off a 4-day general strike in San Francisco. It was the first time a general strike had shut down a major U.S. port city. The strike had been raging since May. Workers battled with police days earlier as the shipping bosses tried to force open the docks that saw 2 workers killed. More than 40,000 poured into Market Street to march silently in their funeral procession. Outrage fueled plans for a general strike. 21 unions across the city voted to walk. In his book Strike, Jeremy Brecker notes the momentum for a general strike was unstoppable, despite attempts by AFL leaders to prevent it. By 8 a.m. on this day, the San Francisco general strike had begun. Over 150,000 workers, including Teamsters and butchers, restaurant and transit workers, joined longshoremen and seafarers in shutting down the ports, the city, and the highways. But as Brecker points out, the strike was met with a powerful counterattack. Hundreds of special deputies were sworn in. The National Guard was called out, complete with infantry, machine guns, tanks, and artillery units. State officials were poised on the edge of declaring martial law. Vigilante raids began on the 17th with assaults on the Marine Workers Industrial Union and the offices of the Western Worker newspaper and strike bulletin. Many other gathering places and homes where workers regularly met were also busted up. Hundreds were rounded up, beaten, and arrested. The city's Central Labor Committee authorized exceptions that eroded the strike's power. In the face of the violent raids and opposition from AFL leaders, the General Strike Committee voted to end the strike.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunny conditions later on, though we have quite a bit of overcast. I told you yesterday we had thunderstorm activity, and it still looks like there's things up around Crater Lake that are getting blown our way. But we should have, sunny conditions later on. Highs in the upper 90s, low 100s. And winds will be at less than 5 miles per hour starting off and then increasing to 10 to 15 later on, and that'll be good. Partly cloudy skies overnight. The good thing now is that we are getting a bit more of a respite and should have lows in the upper 50s, low 60s. Those are the kinds of overnight temperatures we like to see. Getting close. I like the mid-50s personally. Winds out of the west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour overnight, so that'll be good, I think. Sunny skies tomorrow with highs in the mid-90s. A cooling trend. We'll need to break out the sweaters. I don't think so, because you'll get used to the temperatures in the mid to upper 90s, and that's what we look forward to for, the rest of the week at least. Winds tomorrow out of the west at 10 to 15 miles per hour. So a bit of a scouring, heated though it may be. Grass pollen is rated high here in Rogue River, and boy, isn't it. And the air quality for the region is in the good range at 36 parts per million. And the region actually includes, or really is, Rogue River, because the gauge is just down at the hardware store. The daytime UV index is very high at level 9, and I keep telling people to take care. You know what to do. Do it. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.92 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is drying out at 63%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 68 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 75 degrees and partly cloudy. Rome is 92 and sunny with a heat advisory. Kabul is 75 and fair. Hong Kong is 86 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 72 degrees with rain. Auckland, New Zealand is 51 and fair. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 90 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny with a heat advisory. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Italy's tax police said on Saturday they had freed 33 Indian farm workers from slave-like working conditions in the northern province of Verona, while seizing almost €500,000 from the two alleged gang masters. Police said the alleged abusers, also Indian, persuaded their fellow nationals to come to Italy, paying €17,000 each to obtain seasonal working permits. So that's around $20,000. The men were then obliged to work in farms for 7 days a week and up to 10 to 12 hours a day, paid only €4 per hour in conditions that the Italian police described as slavery. Some of the migrants also were asked to continue working for free to pay an additional €13,000 for a permanent work permit, which in reality they would have never obtained, the police added. The two abusers are under investigation for crimes including enslavement and labor exploitation. The victims will be offered protection, job opportunities, and legal residency papers. The issue of modern slavery in Italy came under the spotlight recently, following the case of Sattam Singh, a 31-year-old off-the-books Indian farm laborer who bled to death after being abandoned by his employer in front of his house after his arm was severed by a wrapping machine. Sherry Tanner at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Estonia's Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas, has stepped down as the leader of the Baltic country to become the foreign policy chief of the European Union later this year. Kallas, Estonia's first woman prime minister. We don't use female here. Well, she was handed in her formal resignation to President Elmar Karas during a brief meeting at the presidential palace in the capital, Tallinn, on Monday yesterday. Estonia, under Kallas, age 47, has been one of Europe's most vocal backers of Ukraine following the full-scale Russian invasion of February of 2022. She replaces Josep Borrell of Spain, who has served as the EU foreign policy chief since 2019. Summing up Kallas's 3.5 years at the helm of the nation of 1.3 million, Karras said in a statement that, quote, "It has been a time full of crises, the milestones such as the coronavirus, the economic recession, the war in Europe, and when Russia destroyed our previous security picture with its aggression in Ukraine." The Prime Minister's move automatically triggered the resignation of Kallas's three-party coalition cabinet made up of her center-right Reform Party, the Social Democratic Party, and the Liberal Estonia 200 Party. It will continue as a caretaker government until the new cabinet is sworn in, most likely in early August. Coming up. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. Isn't there a lot of breaking news? And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.